So just let's deal with the accent first. It is South African. It's a little watered down. I've been living in Canada for 13 years, so every now and then you will hear the South African twang come through, and the way I enunciate certain words might be amusing to some of you. Aluminium, for example. Okay, banana, just to name a few. So my name's James Greenwood. My designation is fairly interesting, much the same as Melissa there, where people ask me what I do. The first obstacle is getting my wife to actually be able to tell people what I do, because it often is, he's a physiotherapist, something like that. Yeah, and then they'll ask me, are you a physio? And I'll be like, no. Your wife told us you were. No, I'm a physiologist. Okay, so exercise physiology is one of those designations that's it's not really that well understood. A lot of people just kick physiology around, exercise physiology, clinical physiology. What it is I like and I try to better understand the internal functioning of the human body. I mean, really, I want to know how the systems of our bodies function as a unit. They function together. We don't separate them like a lot of mainstream physiologies try to separate one from the other. I really like to try and integrate them. Because if I can bring them all together and I can see how you function as a human being, I'll be better able to see how I can help you improve. And that ultimately is my primary goal in life. My education originally was from South Africa. I spent doing 4 years of undergrad at the University of Potchefstroom. I then went back to Johannesburg, where I did my postgraduate studies at the University of Johannesburg, Randolph University then. We decided to flee South Africa to come to greener pastures in Canada. I think it was a good decision. We now have a 6.5-year-old little boy. We live in Port Moody. I work at Innovative Fitness in Port Moody, where my laboratory is. It's packed full of very cool, geeky equipment, ranging from $2 to $35,000. And there's some pretty cool technology that I play with that allows me to look inside the body. As you can tell, I'm fairly passionate about what I do. I really, really enjoy doing what I do, and that's why I have really challenged myself over the years to get as much knowledge in as many areas as I can. So my degree was a BCom in sports management. My dad said you can do anything you like as long as there's accounts in that qualification. So I was like, well, BCom sports management, okay, there's a bit of, and basically what it is, it's half BSc, half BCom, and then once you've done your undergrads, you can choose whether you want to go into the sports management or you want to go into sports science. I chose the sports science, of course, but I had done the accounts, so my dad was happy. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist, which allows me to work much like a kinesiologist. I'm a certified exercise physiologist. Right now I'm doing my master's degree in biomedical physiology and kinesiology at Simon Fraser University, looking at developing an experiential learning program for final year undergrad kin students. Because right now we are not providing them with the skills to come into the workplace to actually do a good quality job. We're expecting them to be able to do a good job, but we're not providing them with hands-on. You ask a fourth year kin student to come up and talk like this, they would just be like this. They sit in interviews with me, I ask them questions, they can barely even look at me. So we need to teach them the skills to be able to help people achieve their goals. Right now I do a lot of exercise physiology. I'm very passionate about it. I'm looking to move a little bit more into the clinical, and that's my ability to work with Joe here is kind of driving that. It's definitely a work in progress. You know, there's a lot of change. The world is changing. As we know, there are a lot of challenges with health. The healthcare system in many countries, Canada's not excluded in that. I just heard the government's now recommitted to another however many billions of dollars being thrown into the healthcare system, and it just seems like we're really throwing money at a problem instead of really like just slowing it down, taking a step back and going, look, how can we make a difference in people's health and wellness? And that's what I'm going to be talking on tonight. So, without further ado, I'm just going to quickly fire up my little iPad here. We've got to see here. Okay. So, Okay, well, this guy fires up and gets warmed up. So, the topic that I'm going to be talking about tonight is it's a really, really interesting topic because it's something that you spoke a little bit about, and it's very interesting, the history of how things come about. Where does all this begin? Like, where does exercise come from? Like, why do we exercise? We think that exercise is such a new thing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about something, exercise as medicine. How many of you have heard of exercise as medicine? EMI. Okay, so we've got a couple of takers there. So I'll talk, basically exercise as medicine, and I'll talk a little bit about the ins and outs of that. Is basically saying, you know what, if we can provide a good quality exercise intervention, we can cure or have a profound impact on a huge number of chronic illnesses and diseases. We can prevent a huge number of chronic illnesses and diseases, and as I alluded to a couple of minutes ago, potentially save hundreds of millions of dollars and save people's lives. So let's talk proactive, and that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about tonight. Tied with that, so I'll give you a little bit of a background on that exercise as medicine side of things, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what is the right dose. Now this is a big challenge, because how many of us have been given a training program that is pretty much cookie cutter? On a Monday you do this exercise for 25 minutes, make sure that you're going fairly hard, and on Wednesday you do 50 minutes and make sure you go a little bit harder. Well, you know what? That isn't really tailored for what you need. We need to figure out how can we prescribe physical exercise and activity to you that will help you achieve your goals. So, I'm going to get the ball rolling. We're going to go back in time a little bit here, and we're going to go way back. Like the song says, we're going to go way back in time. So, let's talk a little bit. Wow, that's pretty far back. Hippocrates, everyone knows who that guy is, right? I'm sure you've all heard of him. We're talking around 400 BC, and we're actually going to go even further back than this guy, but said a couple of cool things. Eating alone will not keep a man well. He must also take exercise. So geez, 400 BC, already the importance of physical activity and exercise in maintaining health was known. Food and exercise, while possessing opposite qualities, work together to produce health. So yes, you can follow a healthy diet, you can put the good foods in, but we still need to move the body. The body is meant to move, and vice versa. Outstanding. But it's not just Hippocrates. Tao, 200 AD, the body needs exercise. Only it must not be to the point of exhaustion, for exercise expels bad air, promotes free circulation of blood, and prevents sickness. This is a long, long time ago. We all know this stuff, but they didn't have the technology and the tools back then to be able to draw these conclusions. It's very, very interesting. So what I've done here is you don't need to worry too much about the details, but basically almost 3000 BC, breathing exercises were being practiced for good health. 3000 BC. That is so long ago, it is just mind-boggling, that they were already knowing the benefits and the physiology of respiration and how that benefited you. I'm going to shoot forward a little bit here. We've got a couple of different civilizations here. We've got the Indus River, the Yellow River, Greece, classical period in Athens, and the Roman Empire. We've got Pythagoras, I'm sure you recognize him. Interestingly enough, Hippocrates was the first physician known to provide a written transcript or prescription for exercise for a patient with consumption. He actually wrote down, you need to go out, walk briskly, and this will help your consumption. I mean, that's a long, long time ago, and he was already writing prescriptions for exercises and medicine interventions. So we can see just superficially that there's a pretty long timeline. I don't have all the time in the world to go through that, but it's super interesting. And what I've done here is I've just pulled out the main thinkers. We had Galen there. Exercise for health required moderate intensity. He said that thinning of the body, hardening and strengthening of muscles, increase in flesh and blood volume. Pythagoras was an advocate of daily exercise. He believed that we needed to be physically active. We needed to exercise every single day for good health. He was also an advocate of low, moderate, and high intensity exercise, which a couple of the other thinkers, Tao basically felt that if it was too intense, it could have negative impacts on your body. Right? So there's a little bit of it. Today there's still that, is it high intensity training that's good for you? Should it be moderate? Should it be low intensity? There's all these conflicting evidence. We'll talk a little bit how we wrap our head around that kind of stuff. Hippocrates and Tao, basically, we spoke a little bit about them already. So, Peter Allen's song, "What is old is new again." So 20-odd years ago, exercise as medicine was founded. It's now all over the world. It is now recognized as a means to improve health and wellness, to basically work and deal with any number of chronic illnesses and diseases. What is old is new. Ancient physicians and philosophers believed regular exercise would produce physiological changes that enhanced health. That's exactly what we're saying now. We're saying physical activity improves health. Fantastic. I just found this little piece super duper interesting also. Greek and Indian physicians recognized, does anyone recognize that? Inactivity, obesity, and diabetes. Yeah, there it is. These guys were talking like, a couple of 100 years AD. They're already talking about that. And yet here we are, in a crisis. Crazy, mind-boggling. So where do we stand? Let's have a little look. Exercise as medicine today. Where do we stand? So, over the past 2 decades, considerable knowledge has accumulated concerning the significance of exercise as the first-line treatment of several chronic diseases. This is taken from a review by Peterson and Sultan in 2015. These guys are legit. If you just go and Google Sultan, Ben Sultan, the guy's the real meal deal in terms of research. This is a fabulous paper. It's an unbelievably interesting read. This is what it tells us. It provides us up-to-date evidence. So it's a review. In 2015, it basically tells us exercise as medicine, as an intervention. They give us the treatment for 26 diseases. Everything from psychiatric through neurological, metabolic, cardiovascular, pulmonary, musculoskeletal, and cancer. And they took the main ones. They took the diseases that kill the most people. There's probably hundreds of other applications that we could use this approach in enhancing health and improving and utilizing exercise as a medical intervention. Physical activity represents the cornerstone in the primary prevention of at least 35 chronic conditions. Another researcher, Booth et al. And his gang in 2012. These are a lot. This is a big opportunity here for us to utilize exercise to basically enhance health and wellness. I'm not saying this is the holy grail. This is the solution to all of our problems. But this is a very, very powerful tool. The debate is no longer, or the debate should no longer be whether exercise actually does this stuff. It does. Let's move past it. Let's find a way of bringing it into the mainstream so that we can effect change in people's life. We can enhance the quality of life, and we can actually utilize this evidence-based approach. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about now. How many of you have heard evidence-based? Okay, most of us have heard evidence-based. And really, this is where things are. We need some sort of evidence. Facebook, good source, outstanding. And now with the whole fake news and all that sort of stuff, who knows? You just never can tell. So, Google, yeah. So, this is possibly one of my favorite pictures ever. I love this picture so much, I actually put it on my Facebook profile. What do we want? Evidence-based science. When do we want it? After peer review. And that is the process. That is what we want. Does anyone know where this was taken? Yeah. Protesting Donald Trump and climate change. All right? So pretty cool. That's. I showed that to my son, who's 6.5. He didn't appreciate it as much as I did, but I thought it was pretty cool. It is not a fad. It's not just something that some smart people came up with and started kicking around. And I really, really like this this image, because basically this gives us a fairly simple way of understanding good sources of evidence. Like I said to you, Facebook, Sports Illustrated, probably not the best sources of evidence. All right? When you see words like meta-analysis, systematic review, single random controlled trials, now we're talking. And remember this one up at the top, please. An N of 1 trial. We will come back to that and talk about it in the middle. So, we're looking for knowledge that is reproducible. And these are some of the concepts when we're doing research that we kick around a lot. It needs to be generalizable. And most importantly, we need to see a cause and effect relationship between, and we're talking specifically exercise here, our exercise programs and their outcomes in relevant populations. So if we do one thing, we can expect to see another thing happen. Cause and effect relationship. And if we take that to another group, similar characteristics, we provide that, implement that intervention, we can expect to see that outcome. So the challenge here is taking our evidence-based findings, which are pretty rigorous. Many of you have read any research and understand the process of getting peer review and publications and submissions accepted and all that sort of good, crazy stuff. But then we kind of have this like push and pull battle between, the research, the evidence-based, and then the real world. Because you can't just always take what researchers find and just plonk it down into this environment and go, well, the guys at SFU found that, so it must be. We need to balance the two. These real-world scenarios require a little more flexibility. They require us to think sometimes a little bit outside the box, be a little bit creative. That is where we get the best exercise prescription. EXRX is exercise prescription, by the way. We're wondering. Okay, fantastic. So we're moving along nicely. So now we're still talking exercise as medicine, and we're going to mosey on a little bit to dose. Because dose is, just like it sounds, medicine, you get a dose, you get an amount of the medication you have to take. Exercise, we're looking for a dose. And under that, so we're looking for the right dose. And then, is there a right dose? This is a big question. Because what is the right dose? Well, the right dose for me and the right dose for you are two totally different things. We're going to talk a little bit about how we might be able to navigate, these inter-individual differences and come up with a strategy that will help us to create an optimal training plan or an optimal intervention. All right, so we're talking exercise-based prescription. We're speaking a little bit about the hierarchy of rules again, because we're looking for this quality of knowledge. And now we're going to quickly talk about some of the outcomes that we can hope to achieve with this exercise prescription, using this knowledge, this evidence-based knowledge, to help someone. That's what we're here for. So, point 1 there, we need to maximize the probability of a successful outcome. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that is what makes people buy in, is if there is success, they see change, they see improvements. Improve aerobic fitness, cardiovascular fitness, huge. Improve muscular strength, enhance quality of life, reduce fatigue. People dealing with cancer, fatigue. Exercise, many studies have shown the positive impact that has on fatigue. We need to maximize the efficiency. It needs to work. There will be trial and error. This is not an absolute. It's not black or white. There is definitely a gray band running through the middle of this prescription. But we need to be efficient about the process. We can't take, so I'm going to sign you up for 3 years, coming in 3 days a week at $80 an hour. Does that work for you? You can just pay by cash. No, that's not going to work. We need to have, and based on evidence and research, a fairly good idea of what the turnaround time on this is going to be. Obviously, give or take a couple of weeks. Probably the most important part of this puzzle is we need to minimize the risk of adverse effects. The last thing we want to be doing in our prescription is causing or increasing problems, leading to a reduction in health, reducing the motivation to take part in the program, increasing fatigue, causing injuries, reducing quality of life. All these things need to be addressed. We need to ensure that we are not making them worse. So let's talk turkey. So a couple of considerations that we need to take into account when we're talking about exercise prescription. The first one is we need to really get a good handle on our patient or our client's medical history. We need to be comfortable with where they are coming from in terms of medical. We also need to understand their training history. Because for us to provide an exercise intervention, we need to know where they're at. What have they experienced? What do they enjoy? These are all very, very, very important considerations. This information is gained through intake. We also, in our intake information, need to get a good idea on what their goals, their motivations, and some of the logistical constraints are. Again, these will all help us to really tailor that prescription, really make that prescription specific to that individual. And I'm a big, big advocate. A lot of research in cancer is out on the assessments. If you don't assess, if you don't set a baseline, how are you tracking improvements? How do you know? Yes, there are some subjective, yep, I feel less tired, I'm feeling better, mood states. I like something a little bit more objective. And there's any number of ways that we can do that. But that just gives us a really good baseline. Plus that baseline, I'll shoot on to the next slide because we go into a little bit more detail here. That baseline gives us such an opportunity for managing the program better. And program management is what we are responsible for. I do not provide 16-week training programs for someone doing an Ironman. For them, 3.5 hours into the race to go, gee, I don't think I had enough training. Feeling awful. I would rather have known that in week 7 of training, so I had 9 weeks to do something about it. I don't want to find out after 12 weeks of a training program intervention that whoever I'm working with really was not enjoying that program. That is why there are no improvements. But we went through the 12 weeks and we found out at the end of 12 weeks that that really wasn't what they were after. Rather find that out in 2 weeks or in 1 week. So, the head of the table is our client or our patient. We need to know their goals, their preferences, their initial values, and their logistical constraints. Can they get to a gym? Are they mobile? Do they have finances, funding, etc., etc.? There are a lot of things that can really, really hamper our ability to provide that best evidence program. That's the top part of the puzzle. Kind of the bottom part, kind of the blue arrows, is really based on creating that evidence-based program from research-based evidence, principles of exercise prescription, and physiological rationale. So these 3 things will give us the geeky stuff. This is all the nerdy, the back end. This is where the research comes in. This is where our education comes in. Plus, and this is something I'm a big advocate on, we need to be able to change, adjust our prescription on an ongoing basis. How do we adjust our prescription on an ongoing basis? Do I just go, today feels like a good day to change the program? Or do we maybe do a 6-minute walk test and notice that there is a big, big improvement in cardiovascular capacity? Frequent data collection. It doesn't have to be a whole battery of assessments. It could be one thing. But that will give us some stimulus to make changes to the program. Plus, it will allow us, I was going to go a little bit more into kind of the exercise physiology, but I'll just bring myself back because I was on a tangent. It will allow us to better predict what we can expect is going to happen next. I've been working with you for 8 weeks. When we started with you, you did this. 4 weeks later, you did this. We are now at week 7. I've adjusted your program, you're feeling good, all things being equal. I might not see as big an improvement, but I can expect to see an improvement based on data I have. Otherwise, it's just a crapshoot. Hey, I'll see you in 16 weeks again, and hopefully you improve. Because if you don't improve, you're not coming back and paying more money to use me as your, exercise provider. And that's not a good business model. So, these systematic changes allow us to change that best evidence program as required. And that actually makes our job kind of fun, because we actually have to use our brain. We're not just cutting and pasting workouts. We actually have to be, we need to flow with the program. We need to work with the person. That's what we do. That's the exciting part of what we do in our job. All right, so a couple of principles of prescription. Individuality, I've spoken about this right at the beginning. We need to ensure that our intervention is prescribed for the individual. Unless you're in a group environment where the individuality principle might be a little bit watered down, but we still want to try and give as much specific activity individually prescribed. Progressive overload. We need to provide a stimulus to the body to ensure that it continues to adapt. It's challenging because you don't want to overdo it. And there's no magical number. 10% a week. Like, what is that? Oh, you'll just increase the volume, or just add 10% a week and you'll be fine. It's actually funny because there was a paper published maybe 2 years ago that actually found we were underloading people with the 10%. And this was more kind of athletic populations, distance runners and triathletes and stuff. The research found we could probably push them up to about 20%. But Runner's World, hey? That's 10% rule, man. There it is. Runner's World says 10%, it must be 10%. Variation principle. You do the same thing every single week, you're going to get bored. You're going to stagnate, you're not going to want to participate. Doesn't mean that you change things every single week. There've got to be some kind of anchor activities that basically are repeated so you can master the technique. But variety for sure is the spice of life. And then the specificity principle. You want to improve cardiovascular fitness, you need to do cardiovascular activity. Getting a massage and doing some stretching is not going to improve your VO2 max. I wish it would. All right. Outstanding. So, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty here. So there are 4 considerations when we're prescribing exercise. Frequency, intensity, time, and type. Frequency. How many times a day or a week are you doing the activity? The intensity. What is the level of exertion that you are applying to that individual? The time. How long does the physical activity go for? And the time. The mode. Are you swimming, biking, throwing, jumping, stretching, breathing, whatever the case might be? So, keep that in mind, because now we're going to talk a little bit about some real-world recommendations. And I'm going to give you 2 sides of a coin. The first side of a coin, who's heard of the ACSM? The American College of Sports Medicine. Okay? They're pretty well known around the world. They come out with these position stands on exercise and exercise for cancer and endurance athletes and pregnancy and all sorts of things. And basically what they do is they'll either do a meta-analysis or a review, and they'll get as much research as they can. They'll get all these super clever people together, and they're generally researchers and doctors, and they will go, okay, let's get some guidelines so we can help people. And these are what some of the guidelines would look like. Now, these are exactly what they say. They are guidelines. Because if you were about to start training a marathon runner, how many of you know how to create a training program for a marathon runner? Okay, not too many. I do. But where would you start? You would go and maybe go and Google research on programs for marathon runners, something like that, so you can get some evidence-based research, maybe get a couple of abstracts to direct your thinking. It's not, oh, that's how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to take what they did and do it with the marathon runner. This is directing our thinking. It's a fairly safe option. It gives us some recommendations on aerobic training, resistance training, and flexibility training. And this is for people in and post-treatment. It is fairly conservative, which is fine, Because if you're embarking on this program, you might want to be a little conservative just to get the wheels rolling, depending on the level of experience. So that's the ACSM. That's the position stand. Pretty dry. Do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that. It's great. It's evidence-based. I'm gonna fly forward to a paper that I found, which was pretty interesting because one of the things I noticed with the ACSM was all the activity was low to moderate. And then I found this paper, which is a multimodal approach, and wow, the first thing that jumped out was the acronym HIT. Who knows what HIT stands for? High intensity training. Everyone knows that. Holy smoke! Oh my God, this can't be terrible. High intensity training for people with cancer is like the worst thing you could do. They said exactly the same thing in the 60s on cardiac rehab. Post-cardiac rehabilitation, the Swiss high-intensity interval training. The rest of the world is like, what are these guys doing? And it's actually interesting, cool story. The director of cardiology at Johns Hopkins University was in, one of the leading researchers, actually a Japanese lady, he was at a conference, and she was talking, and this was maybe like 15, 20 years ago. She was talking, and she researches this stuff, about how she has got these amazing results using high-intensity interval training in cardiac rehabilitation. There it is, peer-reviewed, published, researched, solid. Goes up to her and goes, how many people have you killed? And this is like, this guy's legit, like he's the real deal, like this is a big deal. So anyway, he goes back to Johns Hopkins, standing at the window, talking to a nurse, and he tells her the story. And she says to him, you're a jackass. You know, nurses pretty much run the roost. It's not the doctors, we all know it's the nurses. She goes, what? What do you mean? She goes, look down in the courtyard. What do you see? Watch the guy in the pink, what do you call it, dressing gown. So he watches him. He's like, yo, what am I looking for? She says, just watch it. The guy walks. He's got his little trolley and oxygen and what have you. He walks. He sits down for a minute. Stands up. He walks again. And he sits down for a minute. She goes, what is that guy doing? He's walking. He's doing interval training. He walks for 30 seconds. He gets tired. He sits down. The guy's not going to be running on a treadmill at 15 miles an hour. But for him, that is high-intensity interval training. So, a little anecdote there. So, this was really interesting because they definitely utilized the higher intensity training. Is this right? Is this wrong? They got some great results. Their primary goal was to reduce fatigue. They got that. They increased the participants' VO2 max. These were people that were post-treatment. They got increases in VO2 max. The thing I really liked about this study was they used aerobic training, cardiovascular training, resistance training, flexibility training, but they also incorporated body awareness training to the flexibility training. So they had breathing, respiration training, they had mobility work, and they also had massage. So they had the full spectrum of intensities, all the way from massage to relaxation techniques for 30 minutes a week, which I thought was really, really cool. So that's really covering all the bases. I mean, you know, the hourly exercise activity for the week's pretty high. So I thought that was a pretty cool study. And it just kind of showed the difference between, you know, kind of generalized guidelines and specific research. Now, who remembers that? N of 1. Awesome. Does anyone know what that means? N of 1. So, just a single subject study. So why would we want or care about an N of 1? Who's the subject? Who better? Who better than the person you're working with? Who is the best exercise physiologist in the whole world? You guys. Because you know, you feel you have the best insight into how you are feeling, how your body is doing. I can do all the testing in the world. You can tell me that in 20 seconds. So, this is a really, really important concept because As an exercise physiologist, I need to treat each person that I prescribe an exercise intervention to as an N of 1. If I do this, this will happen. I've got my evidence base, I've got my research background. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going, oh, so, double mastectomy, let's get onto the bench here, shall we? And let's do your 1 RM bench press. Let's see what the heaviest weight you can bench press is so we can assign training loads. No, we're not, we have something between here. But I am able to harness you as a single subject research project. Project's probably not my best word, but anyway, the single subject research project, and utilize you to help me direct the flow of your program. It's a relationship that we're building. We are working together. It's not me, the all-knowing, and you, the underling, because that's what it used to be like, right? You know, people that did this stuff were like, oh, wow. No. We're on an even par. So, we bring all these pieces together. Evidence-based. We understand the importance of exercise in our health and wellness. We're using the tools that we have. The researchers spending all the time in the laboratory giving us this information, utilizing people in the field who can read and understand that information, and then can basically assimilate it. And then we bring you into the equation as the N of 1. Because we need to start taking responsibility for our own health. The government can't make us healthy. Your osteopath can do a lot, but if you come in twice a week for an hour, there's a bucket load of hours in the rest of the week for you to just screw things up. And that's what people do. They'll come in for 2 hours a week, and then the other, however many hours there are left in the week, they'll be off drinking and doing all the crazy things and really not succeeding. And then getting annoyed because they're not achieving their goals. So this team that we create will provide the best exercise intervention which will enhance your health and wellness. The research shows us there is no doubt that this is the way that we need to go to enhance health and wellness. Thanks for your attention. Are there any questions?